my kids both texted me and they said, Mom, we're in the safest place possible. So I just want to say thank you to Maricopa PD for coordinating that and for our staff with the practices that we go throughout the school year, which is exactly why we do it. The other thing I did, I had the opportunity about 3 or 4 days last week and then culminating on Friday night to spend it with several of our youth with the Maricopa Health and Wellness program at the high school. And they had their millennial fashion show Friday night. They had the band and focus, and they had clothes and tuxes, and it was a wonderful experience to spend time with our future leaders. These kids were phenomenal. This is the 7th year that I've been able to attend, and this year I was helped Dr. Ewing any way that whatever they wanted, if they want, whatever they needed, I said, I'm here to pick up the pieces. So it was amazing to spend Thursday night looking at prom dresses, which I've never done since I have all sons. So it was amazing, and I just want to thank Dr. Ewing and the high school students for their phenomenal behavior, and the future that we have ahead of us is pretty bright. So I just wanted to talk about that, and then I just want to say thank you for everybody's attendance Monday night. I thought it was a great turnout, and I look forward to our future. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Miller?
Yes, I would like to also reiterate what my other fellow board members expressed. That it has been last couple days have been difficult for our students, our families, and our staff in light of things that's being expressed in terms of school violence. But I think that the Maricopa Police Department, our staff, has done a very well job of responding, and for that I have no fear of these continued social media threats. And it's interesting, I was looking at some studies that when there are testing, that there seems to be a rise in the number of threats to schools. So, but again, every threat is taken serious, and I definitely commend our community, our police department, and our staff for taking evasive action and making sure our schools are safe. I've had the opportunity to go to Butterfield Elementary and also to Pima View, and it's really nice to see now that because our schools are, the elementary schools are really designed for K-5, so it's been really great with the override to have the 6th graders now in the middle school, because the elementaries are much more streamlined, and it takes great pleasure to be able to go to the schools, the elementary schools, and just see how much streamlined they are. And I know it's definitely helped with the staff, because it's easier to manage the building when it's only just K-5. So it's been a great pleasure to see that and see those override dollars well spent. And so I'll continue to finish with the other elementary schools that I haven't completed, and just continue to do what we do best. And it's great that we have a new superintendent, so congratulations to Dr. Loban. And we spent effortless time in the back, and we had some really great candidates, and definitely we had a really good candidate. So I'm really excited for Dr. Loban and the new administration and what she'll help do here. So with that, I'll yield my time.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Miller. Well, you guys have covered school safety and superintendent search very well, so I won't add anything to that except that I agree with everything that you said. And do want to follow up on the school safety issue, that it's good to see students reporting things, no matter what they are, if they end up being a credible threat or not. I think that's one of the big things that will help us in the future, is students reporting what they see and what they hear, so that we can get out ahead of it. So I'm thankful to those students who did make sure that their concerns were known, and thankful, of course, to the staff and to the police department and Chief Stahl for taking care of it. Other than that, I was able to, between all of our interviewing special meetings, attend the district elementary district mile race that is put on by I believe the Butterfield PE teacher coordinates it, but some of the other PE teachers in the other elementary schools, Pima Butte and Santa Cruz, bring the elementary 4th and 5th graders to the district, to the high school, and they had compete in the mile race. And I think it's great to get those kids at the high school so they can experience what it's like at MHS, and it's just fun to see those kids compete. And we got a great future in our elementary students. So I had a lot of fun watching that. And that's all I have. So we will move on to our information work study items, which I'm excited about. We've got a lot of them, but they're going to be very informational. So our first one is Maricopa High School RAM Academy presentation by Mr. Stephen Ybarra. So please come on up. Thank you. Really excited about this because I think our first time getting a presentation on it since it was implemented.
President Nord, Vice President Miller, board members Anderson, Judd, and Cortez. I want to thank you for having us here today. Again, my name is Stephen Ybarra. I'm the administrator of the RAM Academy, and it's a great program. For those people who haven't had a chance to come visit us, our whole objective is to help students graduate. That's it. I was able to be on the interviews for the entire staff for the school, and as I call their name, I'd like them to stand. Let's see, Reed Martin, if you'll start, he's our math teacher. Miss Sandy Juniper, our English teacher. Leontine Reed, our science teacher. Miss Trujillo, Celia Trujillo, is our social studies teacher. And Mike Hunter is our elective teacher. And Mike just started with us at Christmas time.
Yeah.
These 5 teachers have over 159 years of experience. I wanted experienced teachers. And I told them in the interview, I'm not going to question what you teach. I just want you to make connections with kids. That's the key, making those connections. These are all master teachers. They're all HQ in their content area. And that's who I wanted to serve our students. We have a great bunch of students. We brought 2 of them with us today. Jack Williams, if you'll stand, please. And Siani Burgos, if you'll stand, please. They're going to speak to you because those are the ones I want you to hear from. They've done an outstanding job. We've had students who have passed as many as 15 classes. We've already had 12 graduates. Jack was number 9 on our Wall of Fame, and Siani will be 18 or 19 on the list. You know, we've had 12 graduates already. We have another 10 to 12 that may graduate by the end of the year, and they're within shooting range. We've had the most success with our 5th-year seniors and our seniors because they know the value of the education, and they have worked hard at it. I want to let them speak and tell you their story. The information that's up there, you can read it all. I'm not here to read all the slides to you, the information. We've had great support from district office, from Aaron to Tom to Wade. Everybody's been supportive. It is a team effort, and the teachers make the program. That's the bottom line. The last person I want to introduce is the lady who we just hired at Christmas time, and Miss Nickens has been the glue. She's brought everything together. Her background and use of the computer has streamlined all of our work, so Miss Nickens, if you'll please stand. Thank you very much. You've been great help to us. Right now, I know you want a presentation from Mr. Reed, our math teacher, but I'd like the 2 students to come up because they want to say something to you. Jack, are you first? Come on up, son. Jack wrote something. I told him, speak from the heart. We'll see what he does.
So I am Jack. Mr. Ybarra was talking about how he feels RAM Academy is a good place for our 5th-year seniors and our seniors, and being a 5th year myself, I really felt like this was an opportunity that I needed, that I felt like, because I was at a point in my life where I felt like there wasn't much, room to go. And when I had heard about RAM Academy, I felt like that was my opportunity to get in somewhere in life. So I went there and I talked to them, and every single one of the teachers, staff was there supportive of me. They helped me through my goals, and they helped me realize what I wanted to do in life. and that actually, I could push through high school and graduate and everything like that. And now I'm proud to say I'm a graduate, and I'm expecting a son the next upcoming month. So everything's, falling in place, and I'd like to thank all of them for all their help.
Great. Thank you.
I told you you're going to do great. Siani, you're next.
Hi. So I am a fifth-year senior also. At the start of my original senior year, I was having my daughter. She's now 1.5. And I was feeling like I wasn't that motivated to graduate because I had missed my complete senior year because of her. So when I came into Ram Academy, I didn't really have much motivation. And being there, seeing how hands-on the teachers are with our schedules, making sure we get all in the right classes, and having the classes not be so huge that I have a personal connection with every teacher I have makes me so much more motivated to graduate. And now I am in the process of earning my last credit that I need to graduate in May.
Congratulations.
And that's why we exist, because of them. And we hope to have another 12 more by the end of the year. Reed, they want to hear about our math program.
Yeah, I really want to agree with the kids in a lot of ways. One of the things that Siani talked about was our ability in the RAM Academy to be able to work with kids in their schedules. And I firmly believe, and my peers do also, that continuing having that availability to be able to work with their schedules, to look at their transcripts. We have people on staff who have backgrounds in guidance counseling and being able to go through. We have numerous principals who've seen these transcripts and can interpret them, and the opportunity that we have to be able to look at those and see what the kid really needs, and to track down things when kids come into Maricopa transferring without certain things, and us being able to help them track those things down. Really, we teach kids how to advocate for themselves, in a way that is really applicable. One of the things that we hear a lot right now is that the kids we're having the most success with are our older students who have struggled. And so as kids come into the high school and they become credit deficient in their first couple years, or as they transition into the district, we're going to continue to see this struggle towards the end. And Ram Academy is there to meet those needs for those seniors and super seniors and juniors. These are the kids that are getting the most bang for the buck. They are seeing the goals before them, and they're achieving. They're doing really well. I was told last month that you wanted me to talk to you about the Envision program. I came here, and this was my first experience. I learned alongside my compatriots at the high school with the very short time that we had to be able to do that. One of the major struggles I think that was there was that some of that stuff wasn't ready to rock and roll at the beginning of the year. For people like me who came into the district and had no idea what we're doing, but even for people who had been here and maybe they forgot over the summer, they're going to have to do a new curriculum. But we learned and we started to apply it. And there's a lot of different ways that a vision is being applied. I think for what we're doing in the consolidation of the time that we have with the kids, with the goals that we have in mind, with looking at their futures and what do they need the most, I look at the scope and sequence that we have in Envision. I follow it as precisely as I can, but I really have to make some decisions about what are the most important things these kids are going to need. So I love to lean on the curriculum to be able to pull some real life examples, to tie things back to these kids, to show them how it actually works in real life and what we can do moving forward, but then still building the foundation they need, that if they decide to go on to post-secondary education, they're going to feel confident in their ability to do so. And so as I go through this curriculum, as I use these things, I'm able to do that. I can't speak very strongly to the online aspect, the process of self-learning right now, for two reasons. Number one, when we started the year, I was without a home for most of the year. And we traveled back and forth, and that was, we dealt with it, we made it work. And the kids love having a place, which is another thing to consider with the Ram Academy. Them being consolidated in one place is going to be key for this to continue to have success. As we got settled in, as the computer cards were ordered and they came in, we began to apply them. And primarily, I teach blended classes where I am teaching some classes that kids are learning alongside a Play-Doh. We're actually learning another content while I'm doing direct instruction with a number of other kids. So in that case, it's very hard. Looking at what we need, we pull those examples that we need, we give them an experience to what Envision looks like, and we continue to process through that way. So are there other questions about the curriculum you'd like me to be able to try to answer at this time?
No questions, just thank you. It's nice to have an update and to see that it is actually functioning the way we had hoped it would function. And thank you for bringing the students that are working towards our graduation. That makes me most proud.
It is, they are beyond a blessing.
Yeah.
Seeing them get to that point and push through and get their name up on our little wall of fame has been an amazing thing.
Yeah, that's
and
amazing.
as Mr.
This is the wall of fame. We put this in all the classrooms, and they're numbered by the way that they graduated. So
And at first it was annoying that they kept extending every week, but then we realized that's a really good thing, so we'll just keep hanging up pieces of papers. The kids are now checking them as they're coming and going, seeing, you know, where am I, who could I be on this list, you know, where can I get with this? It's a pretty powerful thing. And I think as kids see that, this is
Yeah.
success building on success. This is kids getting a little bit more excited about what they're going to do with their future. Honestly, we had a ton of juniors who came in who were they still didn't quite get it. But as the year has gone along and they look at their life and say that I will be a senior next year, I can get caught up, I can move on, I can make a decision if I can get enough credits this year to go back to the high school or continue to do what I'm doing. I can tell you that, you know, I know that there's a lot of stress right now. I have children in every level of the Maricopa public education. And the last couple days have been a little bit tumultuous. But I agree with you. I've always felt safe about our kids here. But I can tell you this, that as I talk to my kids, there are some kids who do struggle with that. Overall, the experiences, the relationships that the kids have at the RAM Academy, they walk into an environment that is completely different than our high school. I get the chance to go in there all the time, to walk back and forth before school starts, to see my wife who teaches English, and just to stop in and talk and get some information from administration there too. And the culture that is being created in RAM Academy is really unique. It is different. And so I love this opportunity. I thank you for giving me this opportunity to come here from Kansas and be able to do this great adventure. So thank you so much. You know, before I get out of here, just rock chalk. You know, it's a great weekend.
You were so close, so close.
now you can see why the people that I hired are here. So Reed is a former principal. Ms. Trujillo is a former principal. We have a counselor who's on our staff. So we have lots of experience, lots of people that the students can go to, and everybody can relate to one of them. And that's important. We need to make those connections with students. So any questions you might have?
I have one question.
Yes,
I know that we have juniors in RAM Academy this year. Have any of them caught up with their credits that they're back into the regular high school? Were we able to switch any of them over?
The two that we got caught up, they don't want to go back. They want to finish with us.
Okay.
But our success has really been with the older kids. It's funny, and I can't say her name, but she hadn't done anything for the first 3 9-week blocks, because our students take 4 classes and they can get 2 credits every 9 weeks. And she hadn't done anything. And finally, last 2 weeks ago, the light went on and she's now finishing classes. Don't say names. So it's just like it took effect, and she is just busting it, working at home on her Play-Doh classes, getting them done. During the break, she kept calling me on my phone saying, can you open the next one? I have work to do. And I said, remember, you got to take your test at school, but we'll open another one for you to get started. So those younger kids, now that they see their senior year coming up, the light is going on. And we've had a couple that said they don't want to go back.
And Mr. Ybarra, now I think it's awesome that we have our 5th-year seniors graduating, and congratulations to both of you, and thank you for being here. That's awesome. You've got a future.
That's right.
How are we preparing them for their post-graduation? Are we bringing in college counselors? Are we counseling them on their options that they have now that they have their diploma?
One of the things that we didn't accomplish this year that we had promised them was to have those trips to visit some of the colleges, and we just couldn't get or tie down the transportation. The days that we had it, we just couldn't do it. So we're hoping now that there's a CT counselor and she can set some of those things up that we'll be able to accomplish those goals. But if there was something that we didn't do, that was it.
Okay.
We have had the military down. We encourage the kids to take the ASVAB. We encourage them to take the ACT. And some of the students took advantage of that. We told them if they took the ACT, they didn't have to come to our classes that night, trying to do anything we can to encourage them.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So first,
Sure.
is that okay?
Yeah. Mhm.
Sorry, President Norrie, I
No,
didn't
go
mean to
for
ignore you. I'm glad it's a late start. I pushed very hard for that. So I hope we keep that late start in the day, as far as some kids just can't function at 7 o'clock in the morning, like me. So I hope we keep that. The next thing I would like to just kind of plant a seed, is there a way, because when I first envisioned this years ago, is there a way to catch these kids as freshmen and sophomores? And so I would like to see us experiment or maybe look at expanding. I know we wanted to start it with seniors and kind of get the foundation laid and get the kinks worked out, but I would also like to see us explore expanding it to sophomores, because some of those kids have life issues that come up, and it's just better to function in the learning center so they have options, kind of a school within a school is how I see it. So I would just like to see, or maybe ask you if we could look into that, and maybe catch these kids before they become so deficient in credits.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, again, without mentioning names, we had a couple of students who came into the program who were 18 years old, or 17 when they got here. They're 18 now, but they didn't have a credit to their name.
Right.
They were foster children in situations where they would, for whatever reason, they weren't allowed
Life
to go to
happens.
school. Yeah, life happens. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And so we're working with them. We had one young lady who aged out of the foster system, and the family didn't want her anymore because they weren't going to get payment, and so she ended up going to group home on the west side. Well, they paid for a taxi and brought her back for 3 weeks so she could finish up, because there was just no way that she was going to be able to start new someplace else and get any credit. So we're trying to be as flexible as we can with those. With those sophomores who are falling...
Even freshmen. I mean, there's even
freshmen or
I would just like
sophomores,
to
I
experiment.
think the credit recovery program, if they use the model that we're using, I think they'll be more successful. Every one of the classes that we teach, we have an HQ teacher in that content area. And they've got to be able to know the content, to go to that student and get the help. If you walk into our school, you're going to see the kids up sitting with the teachers. Their teachers are going to be going back sitting with the kids, explaining them what the content is. But you only have that if they're HQ in that content area. Right now, we don't have that at the high school.
Okay.
We do, and we're modifying. Ms. Trujillo and Mr. Hunter and Ms. Reed, they're modifying and creating lessons on top of, because some of the material doesn't correlate to what's being covered. So we're having to make modifications for that. And they're working hard at it, making sure that what the students are learning is going to be part of the standards that they have to know.
Okay. No, I just would like to, I would be fully supportive of trying to catch and support our students so they can all be successful.
We'll need a bigger
This
place.
kind of gen within our high school is how I see it. So I'm all for supporting, so thank you.
Question? No. I was just wondering, how many students do you currently have in the RAM Academy?
We started out with 115. We've graduated 12. We're down to about 84. We had some kids who, those 10th, 11th graders who hadn't turned on, they went to other schools thinking it would be better. I mean, one of our graduates, he came the first day. He went to another system. After the second 9 weeks, he came back and he graduated with us. So people sometimes see that they think the grass is greener on the other side, and then they realize that they got to put the work in, and we're there to help them. Primavera and some of the other ones, they can take classes, they can even take the tests at home alone, but there's nobody there to help them with the material, getting it through, and that's the difference with us.
And to that point, do you have projections for next year? Do you have any idea?
Well, we're trying to stay at about 115, 120 to keep our class loads that far down. The counselors are sending us names right now. Mr. Watson is going through those lists, and we're projecting those for next year.
Great. Any other? Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Barr,
Yes.
What's current classroom size average?
Right around 20.
20.
Around 20?
Yeah.
Okay. How much of that time, how much of it is like where the kids are engaged with content, and how much of it is direct instruction? I guess I can ask the teachers the breakup on that, so I was
Math
curious.
and English are direct instruction, the way we have it set up right now, so it's just like taking on the regular campus.
Okay,
We're just 78 minutes long instead of 50.
right.
Our Plato classes, which are social studies, science, and our electives, those are through the Plato system, but the kids still get stuck, and so those teachers who have
Sure.
content knowledge help them through. They have them do PowerPoints, do some research to give them the background information that they don't have.
Okay. So there's assignments in addition to the online content?
Correct.
All right. I just want to tell you guys, you two, that you're very lucky that this program exists. Mr. Judd is taught in systems to where that is a credit recovery program, but it's nothing like the services that you're getting here. You're also lucky because it's the first year it was made available, so it was perfect timing for you guys. Also, congratulations on hanging in there. That's what I do. That's the same job. We hang in there and we get you guys through, and we also understand that a lot of times life happens and it's not always under your control. But these people are here to help, so make sure you thank them. And like I said, you're lucky because it was just in time. But we're really glad that you guys had the opportunity to go through that. Also to the teachers, thank you. I know exactly what that job looks like. What helped me, and just a piece of advice, was going through that online content and actually completing the assignments one by one to see any little hiccups. I don't know if you've already done that. But just a piece of advice, because I learned a lot by actually going through and completing each assignment. Sometimes online can be tricky, and a student telling you something, this isn't functioning correctly, or there's a missing link, or this isn't actually working, and going through and doing all of that stuff and making sure that all that content is solid is really helpful. In addition, you become very familiar with it, and you know exactly what they're going to ask and how to get there, and that helped me out a lot when I was dealing with online content. So thank you guys so much for what you do. Congratulations to you guys. Great job, and thank you, Mr. Ibarra. I appreciate what you guys do.
Yes, I'm interested to know, as any beginning program, there are some implementation opportunities to continue to streamline, and I know it's, as you're continuing to facilitate access to the program for the students, is there any resources or any needs that you may need in order to help facilitate students' access to the program, of identifying those students? Anything maybe in terms of streamlining the process? Is there anything that that could be improved in order to help improve student access to the program?
We can all improve. Right now, one of the keys that we try and go through is we try and sit down with every student, show them their transcript, show them where they're at, and we tell them, don't let us put you in the wrong class. We don't want to make a mistake that's going to make your graduation get pushed back anyway. So we actually give them a copy of their transcript. We give them the sheet that fills it out and shows them what classes they need, so they can be their own best advocate. That's what we want to do. If you're talking about goals down the road, we've had very great support from the district office, but they're busy sometimes. And I think that if there was something that could be done, is to give us a little more access. Ms. Nickens and I can place the students in classes. We're making sure we're documenting for some students get through the material very quickly because they're very smart. They just didn't like the regular high school. So they're done with the class in 7 or 8 hours. We're giving them extra work on side of that. So if we ever get audited, we have that supplemental material that's there. We have some kids it takes 58 or 68 hours to finish a class. And they're struggling because their English skills are poor, their reading is poor, and so we help them with those study guides to get them through. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Our goal is to try and figure out which ones are their most important ones that we can help with and get them through. So anything that we can do to be self-sufficient within our process, I think that would make it easier for everyone.
Thank you.
Garrett, you forgot to put the kids' pictures up.
Do we have another slide?
We have 3 slides.
Three
No,
slides.
Not that one. We don't want to see that. That one.
Oh, nice. Exactly. That's awesome.
Again, thank you. Thank you very much for allowing us to present. And your continued support is so important to us. We appreciate everything that you do. We appreciate the district office and all the help they give us. And hopefully our new superintendent, Dr. Lopeman, can come visit us as soon as she gets here.
Absolutely. We want to thank you for being here and thank the students and the teachers for being here. As we all said, we're very excited about this program. I want to remind the public that this program was made available through the override funds for the wonderful override that was passed last year. And so this is just another offering we can give our students in our community to help ensure that they graduate and have a successful future. So very thankful to those who voted for the override to make this possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, you can leave.
You mean you don't want to stay for the rest of the exciting meeting?
Really? It's not like we're
There's
talking
food.
about budgets yet.
I know Mrs. Mo has food.
I don't think we can.
Usually they disappear at budget time.
Okay, we are now on to our next item, which is grades K-5 specials and grades 6-8 electives, and that is going to be Mr. Wade Watson. I do want to note that our the superintendent candidate that was chosen on Monday night, Dr. Tracy Lopeman, is in the audience. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Krista couldn't be here tonight, so I'm filling in. I don't have as much a formal presentation because from what I gather, you just kind of had some questions and things like that. So I will give you some general information about our specials, and then you can fire away with questions, and hopefully you don't stump me. If you do, I'll come back and give you more information at our next meeting. In terms of elementary specials, when I started 5 years ago, we really had art, music, and PE in all of our elementary schools. 2 years ago, that changed. And that really changed because we didn't necessarily have art or music teachers apply. We advertised for the positions, but as we've had some attrition, we didn't necessarily have art or music teachers that applied. So we advertised for, specials teachers to see what we would get. I will tell you, in that time, 2 of our schools, Saddleback and Santa Cruz, implemented technology. They have a technology teacher that teaches the full year. Some of our specials teachers teach half a year on one campus and half on another, so they can change up the specials. But at Saddleback and Santa Cruz, they implemented technology, and they've been very, very happy with technology. And funny enough, even though that wasn't something we went out in search of, since that time, Butterfield has done some reconfiguring of their specials, and their PE teacher now actually does a little bit of technology with their 3rd through 5th graders. Pima Butte is trying to do the same thing next year, possibly with their library, and have their librarian do a little bit of library with a little bit of technology. That's ideal. It may not happen, but that's something that they're kind of looking into and hoping to plan. On top of that, we had, at Pima Butte, we had dance also offered, and that was split between MES. That was something new for us. Mixed reviews with dance. I think it's one of those things that some kids like and some kids don't. But the teacher has done a great job. She's built really good relationships with the students, and has also done some dance at Maricopa Wells Middle School as well, and has been a great addition there. So again, currently we've got art, technology, music, and dance aside from PE at the elementary schools. In terms of junior high, we've always had PE, we've always had art, always had music. Some recent additions have been drama, Spanish, and technology came on a few years back as well at both campuses. Although it existed, it's kind of changed a little bit in the last few years, but technology obviously is one of those things that's so important, especially as we've invested in technology, and that has been part of our override. I think the technology both at the elementary level and at the middle school level have been so important, especially as we move to things like online testing, just getting kids keyboarding skills.
Absolutely.
And learning how to navigate all of the different things that they can navigate. It's been really important. So
Wait, if I can interrupt, because
Yes.
so technology being a special, what's covered?
So they cover, obviously, keyboarding. We have a keyboarding program in there. Some of them make use of our Reading A to Z program in there. Depending on the grade level of student, they'll teach them things like how to use PowerPoint, how to use word processing programs, how to use Google Classroom.
Okay, these are good things, so that
Right,
when they
yeah.
get up and they're utilizing that technology, they have that familiarization. That's great. I apologize for interrupting.
No, you're fine. So again, I think it's always a work in progress. We work with sort of what we can find. We also work with requests. I know drama was one of the things that we were getting requests for, and Maricopa Wells implemented it. So I was a former drama student in high school and in middle school, so I appreciate that we have that as well.
Great, thank you.
I have one quick question. I mean, obviously, as a PE person, we could always use more PE teachers.
Right.
But have we thought about other languages besides Spanish? Or even sign language or something else that kids might want to take that's going to get them ready for college? Because everybody has to have a language.
I think that we've always been open to that.
Okay.
I think you probably know at the high school, in the past 2 years, we've added German and
Right.
started growing that German program.
Correct.
I could see that, obviously, as it grows, it
Okay.
could be something else that we offer as well.
Okay. What about like sign language or
I think
anything?
that was on the
When we've advertised that we have elective positions, we've been open to any of those things should they pop up. And
All right.
if a teacher were to apply that had that background, we for sure would be interested in something
Cool.
like that.
And now my son brought home his elective sheet for the middle school.
Uh-huh.
And of course, he had some things written on there that weren't exactly already typed on the back side of it. And when I asked him about it, the teachers had told them that he could. Are they looking into doing more of the technology like coding? Because that was one of the electives that he chose.
But it wasn't on the sheet.
But it wasn't on the sheet.
Right.
And so I don't know if this was something that was part of blended. Now, I heard rumors that they're possibly going to keep the kids and teach electives in blended. Do you know anything about that?
I think only in terms of, and I could be wrong, but so far in the discussions I've been involved in, when we look at that RTI elective that we've been talking about for math, that's something that may stay with the blended teachers so that the blended kids stay within the blended environment.
Okay.
I think in terms of coding, we've had different teachers start dabbling in it as they've gained experience. So
Okay.
again, I see that as something that's coming. I think that it has been introduced with various teachers and various students, but it hasn't taken off yet. But I do see that as something that will come from that because it's really growing in being that kind of trendy
Yeah.
thing. And we have teachers that have been interested in it. I know our gifted teacher, Miss Redfern, does some coding with the gifted students, and that's something that she spent time learning herself and learning how to implement. So I think as we get more of our in-district experts, it makes it easier for us to expand things like that.
And I also do want to say, in our we are kind of limited in space that we do have at the middle school. So I understand why some of the electives, like we couldn't have a culinary class or something like that. But I do appreciate the fact that I know this year at Desert Wind, they offered an alternative to a PE class, health and fitness, which for my son was very beneficial because he's not an athlete. And so he really enjoyed that class because they did do physical exercise as well as learning on how to be healthier. So I did appreciate that, and I don't know, do we have any other alternative type PE classes that we could be looking at expanding that? Because that would be a fairly simple thing to expand on.
The PE teachers have been looking at that, and as they, again, come up with the ideas and have time to kind of flesh out a curriculum and an idea, they come forward with it, much like they did with that class. And
Okay.
I agree with you. It is something that's very easy to implement. So once they've had time to develop that idea, flesh it out, get a kind of a plan of curriculum, and then see what they get for takers, obviously, that kind of drives the schedule too, how many students request that class.
So here's the question. I'm sorry to keep asking so many questions.
No, go for it.
what is the process? So if a teacher does think like, okay, well, I'd like to offer this, do they know what they have to do? Do they know the process and the steps in place to try to gain interest for an additional elective course?
So at the secondary level, I can just speak for how that has come about. Typically what they'll do is they'll go to their administrator, propose, what they would like to offer. Then we actually have a course proposal form that asks a lot of questions about, what would this course look like? What would the expense of the course be? What supplies would you need? What would the curriculum be? What standards would be aligned to it? And then that gets sent to me. And then I usually work with the principal to talk about, where are we at in this process? Do you feel like the teacher could accomplish this? Do we have some of those supplies? What would we need to get if we needed, if we do want to offer this? What's the student interest like? So it's very well discussed and hammered out, and then we take them one by one in terms of what requests are. Same thing happens at the high school with anything they offer. It's a course request form that they fill out with the principal and send to me, and then the principal and I talk about how we make it happen, if it can happen.
Okay, and one last question, I promise.
Sure.
So everyone understands, but do we actually go out and ask the teachers if they have any ideas? Do we send like an email blast asking them, hey, here's a form in case you think of something, and here's the process?
I can tell you at the high school, I know that happens. I do see the emails that get sent out school-wide at the high school, so I can tell you it definitely happens there. I can't say for certain that it happens at the middle school. I can say for certain that it does happen at the high school.
So is it something that your department can initiate with our middle school
absolutely.
teachers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry, that was an extra question.
No.
I love when we have teachers in the back randomly shaking their head yes, no to these answers. In terms of the coding, it sounded like our tech goddess, Christine Dickinson, said yes, there is coding being included and blended, and I think I do recall my children being involved in that, going through the coding. So they do get exposed to that, which is great. One of the questions I had, Mr. Watson, was in terms of the technology that they're being exposed to in that special, and I know I'm going back to this, it's important because if they're going to be exposed to this stuff at the higher levels, it would be great if there was some coordination between what those teachers were going to be exposing those kids to once they got to the upper levels, and what was their exposure in those specials in elementary school. I know that that's like maybe down the road, but I think it would be a great thing to look at, because then they'd have a comfort level with that technology in terms of once they get there, they're familiar with this stuff, and their teachers can expect them to throw them into special projects, and they won't have to slow down in terms of describing the technology, and this is how this works, and this is where you click, and they're already very familiar with it. So maybe just something to think about in terms of down the road, that they have that familiarity.
And I can say some of those discussions have been happening. I
Okay.
can tell you at Saddleback and Santa Cruz, where they have that full-time tech person, I know those people have reached out to the middle school tech people and met with them and had discussions of how can we best prepare the kids that are coming
Right.
to you. Because, yes, obviously that would be the goal, is that we
Great.
continue that path.
Thank
for
you
them.
so much.
So to that point, and I don't want to say I requested this agenda item because I helped set the agenda, but that was my main focus in having this presentation tonight. I volunteered in a 5th grade classroom where the students couldn't log on because they just didn't have the technology training to log on. And with our new Envision Math system, which is very online based, or has a lot of online components that are very useful and helpful, and we want to use our entire curriculum, I think I would like to see the district more strategically look at what we offer our students and how that's going to help them as they proceed to middle school and high school. And I think technology is the obvious choice in terms of a special for those kids, even if it's, like I said, for kindergartners learning how to log in,
Right.
or learning how to take a test. I mean, because that's where we're going, that's where we are.
Yep.
And I understand the shortage of teachers, I understand those issues, but I think that if we really focus and strategize on how we can make this work and make it a priority so that teachers aren't teaching logging in, they're teaching math.
Right.
I mean, if you lose 15 minutes of your math lesson
Absolutely.
logging in, it's a long time.
Right.
So I would really like to see us move in that direction. And also because the kids from the elementary schools that get the technology special come into middle school so far ahead of the kids from the other
Right.
schools who don't have the Google Classroom and the PowerPoint and all of those experiences. And we don't want to bring kids in on different footing, you know. That's tough for teachers,
Right.
not only students, but teachers.
Right.
So,
It's like having your freshmen and your JV run the same offense as your varsity.
exactly.
Once they get up there, you don't have to waste time teaching it. They already know what they're doing.
Agreed. And I think, as I said, I think some of our principals are finding creative ways to make that happen, and I think that opens the door for the rest of us, you know, to start planning of, here's our way to make that happen. You know, we were looking at one path, but we've discovered, okay, here's another way to kind of get that in there.
Yeah.
So,
Great,
Mr.
thank you.
Watson, I'm curious to know, in the course of celebrating our rich diversity within MUSD, have we reached out to, like, say, the Native American Parent Advisory or the Ak-Chin Education Group in terms of, is there anything culturally in terms of electives that, you know, possibly could be, you know, provided or offered or proposed for our students?
I think in terms of an actual elective, no. I think in terms of, I'm sure you know because I've shared with you the teaching and learning newsletter that goes out every month. We have a cultural focus or multiple focuses each month, and I think we've reached out to many groups to provide us with materials and information and guest speakers that help us deliver, you know, different cultural diversity activities and lessons that relate into the content, but also bring in, again, that culture and allow us to celebrate that. So, yeah, I mean, we have some real good community partners. I usually present at Ak-Chin a couple times a year. I'm very familiar with my resources out there. We have a really good relationship. I've also worked with Mr. Irving and Councilmember Wade a lot with like Black History Month. So again, we're always working those resources to build, you know, all of the things that we can offer in terms of diversity in our classrooms.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Watson? Thank you so much for giving us that presentation.
You bet.
And since you are next, just go ahead and stay there.
Okay.
And we will move on to information work study item C, the ELA adoption update.
Perfect.
Exciting stuff.
Yes. Okay, so I think that you know a lot of this information, but in case you don't, I'm going to kind of recap a lot of it.
I wanted to sit
At the start, we identified 3 vendors that we would be interested in. They're kind of the big 3 companies. They're not the only 3 companies, but they are kind of the big 3. We worked with them during the math adoption as well. So we identified those 3 vendors. We learned a lot of lessons from last year with the math adoptions, kinds of things that worked, things that didn't work. And last year, we tried piloting a lot of the campuses, and I'm not going to say it wasn't a good process, but it's kind of hard when you're only piloting one and not the others. And we had people piloting all 3, but you didn't have one person piloting all 3 because it's a lot of the work on the teacher to learn all 3 different systems. We made sure that we had it at each campus. We had representatives piloting each of the different publishers, but it was just a lot of work. It was a lot of work on the teacher. Some teachers chose to not pilot because that's intimidating. That's a lot of work to do. So I was lucky enough, one of the members of my team said that in a district that she had worked in prior, one of the things that they did is they took the sample kits that you see that are on the other side of this wall, and instead of just having those here at the district office, those were at every one of the campuses so that they were accessible to all of the teachers. And that way, if it's on their campus, they can more easily go access it and flip through things and borrow pieces and try them in their classroom. So that was one of the things that we changed right off the bat. We did have our first round of presentations where each of the companies came out and did a formal presentation. They did an elementary presentation, a middle school presentation, and a high school presentation. Funny enough, at our first go-around of presentations, we had a really good secondary presence, but not a real good elementary presence. We recorded those presentations and put those out and shared them. Christine put that out in her Tech Tip Tuesday and made sure to remind people that, here's how you access that information if you couldn't be there for the presentations. Because again, we took your feedback and I very much appreciate it. We wanted to get as much participation as possible in this, and we were going to hammer home message after message after message and opportunity after opportunity so that, if you weren't a part of this process, it's because you chose not to be, because we really put it out there in as many ways as we could. After that, we collected some feedback. We had some survey forms for them through Google Docs, Google Surveys, and we took that feedback, sent it to the companies. Then the companies came back for a second round of presentations a few months after the first to speak to those questions and concerns that came up, and then also take any new questions that they have, because that's one of the things that happens as you have time to really start getting your hands on the materials and practice certain things within them. That's when you start to really have better questions because you're familiar with what you're looking at. And in that round, second round, that was very well attended by elementary, and secondary, not as much. There were still secondary people there, but just in terms of the number of teachers showing up, that's kind of how that played out. After that, one of the things we needed to do is we needed to kind of get a vote in place by the teachers as to what they want. And rather than do that in a smaller committee, which last year was comprised of the people who took part in the pilot, because they were the really ones who had their hands on all of it, because we had it out there the way that we had it out this year, everybody had the chance to vote. Now, we did that via a rubric because that has to do with the procurement process and purchasing laws and so forth, and that was a rubric that was shared with all of the vendors so that they could see here's how we're quantifying our choice. And then on top of that, one of the things that you asked is could we simply, just in case they were intimidated by that rubric, send out a question, just which one is your favorite? I was very happy to see that matched, because that was a little worrisome for me because, again, there's a procurement process in place, and I'm like, ooh, that's just going to really derail things. But it didn't. The votes matched. I think the only thing that were different sometimes is sometimes when they scored them on the rubric, they tied two of the companies, and then obviously they had to make a choice between those two when they did the vote. But that was less than 5 people that did that when I went through all of the data. So we collected all of that. This is kind of how it broke out. So there were 3 companies. I'm not naming them tonight since we're not necessarily moving forward as an action, but they're all watching. They're watching. So at the elementary level, 50% of the teachers, and there were 104 teachers who voted, chose company A, 41% chose company B, and 9% chose company C. In terms of kind of how that breaks out, I will tell you that we had one school that was very heavy on company A, one school that was very heavy on company B, one school that was very split, half-half, company A or company B, and the rest were very much a mix. So, and then at the secondary level, I kind of have some updates since I built this PowerPoint, but at the secondary level, looking at all teachers 6 through 12 that teach ELA, 52% chose company A, 9.5% company B, and 38.1% company C. However, a little caveat to that is when you take out just the high school and look at just the high school votes, the high school more heavily chose company C, and the middle school more heavily chose company A. So I went and met with the high school English teachers last week and said, here's where we're at. I asked them, do you feel strongly that you need to have the same curriculum as the middle school? And at first they said yes. And I said, if, because the middle school votes, along with some of you who chose company A, outweigh company C, will that be disastrous for you? Are you going to be able to live with that? And they said, no, they could live with that. Well, then last night, and this morning I started getting a series of emails, and the high school is concerned. They're very split between the two, which is not a bad thing. It tells you that they're both good companies. And per their latest email this afternoon at about 3:30, one of the things that they would like to do, should you choose to move forward with this, is that the high school would like to delay their choice for a year and pilot the 2 companies that they're torn between. I did reach out to both companies and ask them if that was a possibility, and they did say yes, that we could do that. We could pilot if that is the direction that we choose to go, and that would give the high school kind of a year to practice with the materials and feel a little more solid with their choice.
So if I may,
Yes.
just ask a real quick question. So would that mean that we would go with company A for elementary and middle school then?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, yes, based on the scores, yes.
I believe 104 teachers at the elementary level is definitely statistically significant. However, with the 21 teachers at the secondary level, what percentage overall would you have any idea what that would make up? Because I'm wondering if that is actually statistically significant, representing for the teachers at the secondary level.
How that kind of breaks out scoring-wise, is that what you're asking, between them?
I
Well, if you
think
have 21 teachers,
Well, it's-
individual teachers.
It's because those are just the English teachers. Those are the only ones that are going to be using that curriculum. So that, and if you break it out in that way, it would,
Right,
I
that
would
be the
bet it would.
majority. That'd be the majority of those teachers, then, right?
Yes,
The fall. Okay.
yes.
But wait, that's secondary
Because
is
it's secondary.
6 through 12.
6 through 12.
6 through 12.
6 through
So
12.
it would be interesting to know how many
Overall.
ELA teachers we have. 6 through 12.
Overall.
Yeah,
and then
right.
compared
That
to
was my
21,
question.
Yeah.
And then, so what
How-
percentage?
How many how many English teachers do we have 6 through 12? Only 21?
I think we have 22, actually. There was one that did not vote,
Okay.
that I found.
Okay. So all but one voted, so then that's pretty solid.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
that is a pretty
That does
solid
not
turnout.
count, I will throw this in just because somebody will say, oh, you didn't say this. That does not count necessarily our ESS research teachers who teach English.
Well, that's a teacher's toolbox. We are very much involved usually in that process. So turnout, and decisions for that is usually pretty high percentage.
I have 2 questions.
Go for it.
So the reason we started talking about this was because we wanted a continuous curriculum that went K through 12. Because we have so many gaps, and we have had for the last 20 years. So I personally have a problem with approving, because then we would have to delay even elementary, because how do we know if it's going to actually be continuous? So I want to see K-12. I want to see a curriculum that we know is going to be continued versus middle school, then all of a sudden there's this big drop-in gap. So I have a problem with having a separate curriculum at the high school, personally, because it defeats the purpose of us adopting a curriculum that we talked about that was continuous K-12. Because the big complaint was there's gaps. These teachers are complaining because the kids didn't learn this in 6th grade, or they didn't learn it in, so I am against a separate curriculum for high school. I think that if we're going to decide on something, then we do it K-12, because that was why this whole thing got started. So, so there's only 22 English teachers in 6th grade through 12th grade.
Yes.
Okay. But that would be my only thing, is if we're going to adopt one, I want it to be K-12. And if we wait a year on the high school, then that means it's going to delay another year I just don't see that.
Can I just...
I don't see that following what our purpose was when we had this discussion a year ago.
Right. Can I share one caveat to that, is that when you look at the English curriculums, the programs are different. Though offered by the same company, you have one program that is for K-5, and you have a different program that is for 6-12. They are both made by the same company, so there will be similarities, but they are different programs. I don't know that changes your mind. I just want to share that as a piece of information.
But at least
that
it's the
they
same
are
company.
separate. Yes.
Who knows what a whole other company, I mean, I guess I would have, as a teacher, that was irritating to me when, elementary did one thing, secondary does their own thing, and it really is not working.
Right.
So that's my only long 10 cents worth.
Wait, I'm going to ask you a question from a teacher's perspective. I don't understand, everything at the administrative level of curriculum, so if I'm way off base here, just say, Board Member Judd, just be quiet and move on. Is there, if you're getting feedback from the teachers concerning a division in the curriculum, do you have play area in terms of the packages that you can get with that curriculum that may include something that the other group said was missing?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yes.
Because I know going through the process of ordering curriculum, you have lots of options in terms of the packages that you get. And if
Yes.
you get feedback from a group that says, well, we thought this component was weak or that it was completely missing this, and then you see, well, it looks like this curriculum has a package that you can include there, that's going to bolster that, and that would fix that problem. So I'm just throwing it out there,
Yes.
for teachers to be open-minded about that, give Mr. Watson some flexibility in terms of, the packages that he can play with, put together, and try to come to a consensus and make everyone happy, and
Yes.
we get a nice continuous curriculum.
Unfortunately, that was not what their complaint was, but yes, that would be a possibility with any of them.
So I'm going to ask the question, what is the major difference between Company A and Company C when it came to the high school curriculum?
Sure. I'm going to share with you what they told me.
Okay.
Okay, what the high school teachers have said. Those that chose Company C felt that Company C was a little less scripted. I think sometimes teachers like scripted curriculum and sometimes they don't. And that's really common. I feel like it's 50-50 really down the board. Some teachers want that script and they really want to follow it. Others, I was one of the others. I very much enjoy planning and so forth. I appreciate the script, but I can take the pieces that I need and leave aside those that I don't. So with Company C, they felt like it was less scripted. Company A was more scripted. So those that liked Company C did not necessarily like the fact that Company A was as scripted as it was. The other major complaint they had was the titles that were offered in the two different companies. You're going to have some repeat, but obviously different companies have different rights to different titles. And you had some teachers who really like the titles with Company A, and you have some who really like the titles with Company C. So that was an area of contention, and I can tell you, being a former English teacher or recovering English teacher, whatever you want to call it, that is very, very common. We like those things that we've taught, and our selections, we hold them very dear to our hearts, and so if we have to give up certain texts, it doesn't always sit well with us. So.
Okay, so as a follow-up question, because you are a former ELA teacher,
Yes.
and I appreciate your knowledge in this, how hard would it be if K through 8 was with one company going into secondary with Company C? How much difference of the alignment would there be?
I'm going to share two opinions. I'll share the opinion of Ms. Balt, because I've had a lot of conversations with the English department chair at the high school, Ms. Balt.
Okay.
She was one who initially said, I don't want to have there be two separate curriculums. But she likes Company C. And she, over the last 2 days, I would say over the last week, since we had our meeting on Wednesday, has spent more time going in and looking more heavily at the alignments in both curriculums and what the difference in texts are and that type of thing. And where she initially had that fear that there would be such a difference in alignment, she felt more secure after spending the time researching it from that perspective, that she felt more comfortable saying, I myself would rather go with Company C and don't feel like there will be this big learning curve between the two. From my perspective, again, being a former English teacher, English is different than math. Math is very, very sequential. While there is a sequence to English, it is not as finite in terms of how things move along. Our standards very much progress level to level, but it is not quite as leveled as math, whereas if you miss something, at, say, the 7th grade level, it's going to completely change your understanding of ELA, whereas with math, those things are very critical. They all build on each other. So I really anticipated in my mind that there probably would be a choice of a different curriculum at the secondary level. I really thought 6 through 12 would completely choose a different curriculum, but middle school did not. So I was surprised. So I agree with Ms. Anderson. I think there's always a certain amount of familiarity when it is a total K-12 program. I think that if you have teachers committed to bridging gaps and making sure that the communication is going on between the middle school and the high school, I think that they can make the transition beautifully, but they have to be committed to doing that.
Well, I guess my fear is that teachers come and go.
Mhm.
And if we adopt a different curriculum, who's to say the next teacher's going to be able to pick up those gaps?
Right.
But if we've got something that is K-12, then we know that the rest of the staff can offer some support. As much, obviously it's 52% for Company A,
Right.
Even at the secondary level.
Right.
So that's my only concern is I value teacher input, but I also, how many of those teachers have been here for a while and how many are with the district the first year? That would be another question I would ask is who's been here the longest and what is their evaluation? Because I just have concerns with us doing something based on a few teachers that may not be here in the next few years.
Sure.
I just want to, I love our teachers and I'm
We
a
want you
teacher
all
myself,
to stay.
But
Just to
I'm
make
just
that
saying,
clear, we want
things,
you all to
life
stay.
happens,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
sometimes that, it just happens. But I just want to make sure that we're making the best decision for our students and for the next 10 years, because we probably won't get a chance to adopt other curriculum again.
And that, I will
So-
say, is their biggest concern
Yeah.
and kind of why they want to delay and are questioning their choice is the fact that they will be stuck with it, so to speak, for a prolonged period of time, as we know. Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
what would be your recommendation? Do you think it would be beneficial for us to move forward with the K through 8 Company A and pilot a high school A and C, and then worry about then the following year purchasing whatever ends up being their choice?
Okay, you're asking me my opinion now, so.
Well, you're the
I'm
director,
not sharing
yes.
my opinion a lot with the teachers purposely because I want it to come from them. I really do want it to come from them, and you've asked me to make sure that it does come from them. I like the K through 12 curriculum. I like the idea of a K through 12 curriculum. I am confident enough in my teaching abilities that I could do either or and that I could make it work. But I also appreciate that we do have some attrition, and it is important that that continuity is there. And I will also add that in speaking with the high school teachers, even as they expressed their concerns yesterday and today, they have continued to say that they will live with the other curriculum if that is what is chosen, and that it's not awful, it's just not their first choice.
No pressure.
Right, I know.
That's Dr. Miller. I'm just saying it out
That's
loud.
why I continually have been able to say that it is ultimately your decision.
To that point, and thank you so much, this has been a great discussion, and I do appreciate your background in this subject. I think it really does lend to this even more. But in terms of, because we just did this, right? We adopted a math curriculum, K-12, and you had some people who were happy about the one that was chosen and some people who were not.
Yes.
And I guess going forward, because it sounds to me like some of the folks at the high school who may express or may not be in favor of the one that it seems to be the majority are some of our seasoned teachers, some of our highly qualified, excelling teachers who consistently produce great scores. And can't we give them some leeway? I mean, let's say we adopt Company A, great teachers who are consistently meeting and exceeding with their students' scores. Can't we give them leeway so that they don't feel stuck? I mean, obviously follow the, use it, but give them flexibility so that it works for everybody. Is that possible?
It is, and I'm glad that you asked that question because it's a discussion that I had with a couple of the teachers who kind of posed some of that question. There were a couple of teachers who teach honors level, and they've said, you know, with honors, am I going to be stuck to this curriculum, you know, verbatim? And I said, absolutely not. I think that our honors curriculum is one of those things that we adapt anyway, and we see that as a component that we have to bring in with any of our curriculums is when you start modifying it for honors, since that's really working towards the AP track, naturally you're going to bring in other resources and other ancillary materials that kind of help support and prepare for that AP track. Not that they don't exist in the curriculum, it's just, it's a different design. It is. I also spoke to the fact that, you know, for those teachers who feel like there's this script that they have to follow, that's never the district expectation. We ask you to follow the scope and sequence, you know, follow the standards as they are laid out in that progression, but as came up with math, you're going to be given a barrage of materials and lessons that honestly you won't get through, and that's one of the things a lot of our teachers with math felt very overwhelmed with what was there, and many of them were trying to do everything that was there, and I've said that's impossible. I mean, one of the beautiful things about these curriculum packages is that they give you so many different tools and lessons that they really fit a variety of teaching styles. And that's the intent. They want to be able to provide all of those different teaching styles, resources, and lessons that fit that. So I have communicated that and tried to say, you know, I certainly am not coming out to your campus and saying, oh, you're not on page 6 today and you didn't read this story and did, you know, lesson 3. That's not the way that we operate. I was a teacher, again, I was that teacher who didn't necessarily want the script. I would say probably my first couple years I would have loved to have the script. I didn't have it, but, and that's a point that even they brought up. It is a nice feature for the newer teachers to have that script.
Exactly.
So, in terms of price tags, would there be any difference in terms of developing a K through 12 ELA versus having 2 different vendors? Would that change any in terms of the price tag? Would it make it cheaper or more expensive? Or I mean, help me understand that.
Sure. Company A is the most expensive of the 3. For a full K-12 adoption, we're looking at about $1.7 million. $1 million of that is the K-5 piece, because if you know anything about teaching reading, especially at the K-2 level, there are a multitude of resources and books for teaching reading, really teaching the practice of reading. So the elementary piece is $1 million by itself.
Yeah.
And then the secondary piece is about $700,000. If you were to split, yes, Company C is a cheaper curriculum by, I would say, about $200,000
So really
for
not.
the secondary level.
Just throw it out there for anyone watching at home what curriculum looks like. It's more, because it may have grown up with, this is your textbook, and that's the curriculum, okay? It is not that anymore. There is so much more than that that is included. You basically get, it's almost like Christmas morning in many ways for teachers.
Yeah.
You have these gigantic boxes that you get to hunt through, and you get to choose what, you know, what
Yeah.
goes
You
along
have
with this
options,
lesson, and you
yeah.
have a lot of lessons. There are lots of things. It allows for that diversification in terms of how you're presenting the content. So I just wanted to explain that because I know a lot of people, you know, they grew up in different eras and they assume that, you know, curriculum is just textbooks. Why is it so much? It doesn't look like that anymore. The technological component to it adds value. All of the different add-ins, and it gives teachers a lot of options in terms of presenting the material. So I think it's important that the public knows that. It's not just textbooks. There's a lot of other things. And I don't know, I mean, in terms of how much it's going to cost us in terms of the technology to make sure with that ELA adoption, that has to be kind of a thought in all the board members' heads in terms of, are we going to be able to meet what that curriculum needs in terms of technology, because that's an additional cost if we want to be able to utilize everything that curriculum is providing, and that's something that's got to be continually factored in now, because so much of the curriculum is starting to transition to technological things. We have to have the components in place in order to be able to utilize what the curriculum is offering.
That is a great point to bring up, and if I can speak to that, I know I've talked a lot, sorry.
Asking you questions, it's as much our fault.
And again, I'm a former English teacher, so this is the one that I really can talk to you a lot about. In terms of the technology, that was something that a lot of them brought up. Company A has a very large technology side to it. None of them are technology dependent. They all can be delivered print or technology, combination of the two or separate from each other. Same as our math, and we have teachers who love the technology side and want to do it all technology, and we have those that still, they do exist, that are fearful of technology and it's not their friend and they don't use it as much. But a lot of, several of the English teachers I spoke to said they were concerned of how much of the technology side of the curriculum they'd be able to use with where we currently sit with computers. But what I did point out to them is I would want them to remember that with the override, we have that money every year that's spent on computers. And while right now at this second we may not have all of those computers for them to utilize all of that, that's coming. It really is coming. And knowing that this is a curriculum that we'll be with for at least 6 years and probably longer, keep that in mind when you make your choice.
So let me ask one more question, if you don't mind. So in terms of quality, if we look at, we have one option of K through 12, then the other option of splitting that. To the best of your knowledge, would that, so I understand, so K through 12, would you think that would have a better quality of education across the board if we just adopted from one company? Or would there be any quality education in jeopardy if we have split it? Or is there a way to kind of streamline that for the two in order to not jeopardize quality?
That's a complicated question. So, in terms of quality, just the adjective quality, I think they're both very quality curriculums. But I think what you're getting at is the difference in how much work it would take to bridge the marriage of the two. As Ms. Anderson said, because you'd have that one curriculum, a lot of the language that's used, a lot of the practices that are used are going to be consistently the same because they are from that model. Whereas with the other curriculum, the model wouldn't be an exact match. I'm not going to say it's drastically different by any means, but it won't be an exact match. And so there will be, if you want to attempt to make sure that there is that alignment between the two, it'll take some work to make the two align. Not that we can't do that, we can, but that would be the difference in terms of quality per se.
Thank you.
Great. That's all the questions. I really appreciate you being here today, and this is really great information. I know it took a lot of time to get to reach out to the teachers and compile it, and I appreciate the effort on getting the final question too, just so we could see where it aligns, and I think it's been very helpful to us, so thank you.
Absolutely, and should you want more information from a high school teacher, Ms. Balt said she'd be more than happy to come speak at any time if you would want. I know that Mr. Roush would like to talk to you from the financial side of things. That's why I put this out as an informational item rather than an action item, so that he could kind of gather that for you with the price tag. I will say I would love it if we can make the decision somewhat soon, obviously, because there's an urgency to get whatever we're getting ordered in here and get this training scheduled. So.
And school starts earlier next year.
It does. It does. Yes.
So, Mr. Watson, what would be your ideal date, your drop dead? When do we need to have a decision made? No, I'm asking you because
I would love it if at the next meeting you had that it could be an action item.
Okay.
Personally, just because there's still a lot of work to be done to get it implemented.
We like honesty.
It really is.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Our next work study is a Child Nutrition Department presentation by Ms. Suzette Moe.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for being here.
Welcome to the new superintendent. No pressure, right? Okay. So, I am happy to share with you this school year has been awesome. We have just accomplished so many things. Let me put my glasses on. Okay, so these are the programs that we have that come out of school food service. We cover a lot of areas, as you can see. And moving right along, I gave you a packet just because there's so much information, and I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as possible. The next screen is, for those of you that aren't familiar with the National School Lunch Program, all of our regulations and rules come from Congress. USDA implements them, sends memos out, ADE follows up with us, and we have to follow what they say. And so the buck stops at my desk. I don't make the rules. I know I upset people sometimes, but that's my job, is to regulate the program. So I appreciate all the support that I get from certified staff, but I really want to do a shout out to the classified, because every single department does something for school food service, and I really appreciate everything they do. This is the staff, kind of breaks down what we have going. You can see that I have 2 people that work directly under me that kind of handle the field operations, and then the different site staff that we have. And the high school is a busy, busy place, so they obviously have more people, and next year we'll even have more because we're growing. Yeah. Okay, and these are the organization responsibilities. You can see what the people under me, what they have to do. We're required to report, document, so that's why there's so much going on. And then I have usually what's on my plate, and then what's on the site manager's plate. So you can see that our days are full. So this year, well, I think it implemented a couple years ago, but every year they increase the CEUs that we have to get. And all of our required minutes, hours, we wound it down to hours because it was easier for the ladies to track it, have been completed. So we're in 100% compliance already. And they really enjoy it because they learn so much, and it's on the computer, so they can do it at their own speed. And some of the Hispanic ladies that would prefer to have it in Spanish, they're able to do that as well.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't do 2 things at one time. Okay. So these are the training requirements, and everybody from the custodian in my kitchen at the high school all the way down, we have to do the training. This year we contracted with Southwest Training Systems, and what they did, oops, what happened?
There you go.
What they would do is come out and do mock inspections at all of my kitchens every month. So when we had a real health inspection, we aced it. So that was a big help. And they also set up the classes that we could offer for the ladies, and then Diana Torres is the one that picked each month which classes the ladies should take. So it really helped them keep on track. And then she would monthly follow that and get after who was ever behind on their minutes. Okay, so now the good part. 5-year comparisons for our program. I've shown from 2013 through 2017 our revenues and our expenditures. And what I would really like to point out is what food service has given to the district in indirect costs. This money we're required to give back, and ADE has a formula where they figure out what we have to pay, so that's how that's calculated. So we've been in the black every year. And then the breakfast and lunch comparisons, you can see what we feed every year. I got these off the AFR. And then our current year, I started working on this PowerPoint in February, so that's why I'm using January numbers. And you can see what we pay, or what we do, how many we do for lunch and breakfast, and our current free and reduced percentage. So our 17-18 accomplishments was our department continued to have a positive cash flow. We added new staff at the middle schools and the high school and the nutrition specialist positions. We had enough money to be able to buy or purchase the membership for all of food service staff for the School Nutrition Association. We bought the additional tables to finish out the high school dining area. We purchased a new food cart, which will be, I'd like to do it this year, but it probably won't start till next year because of electrical issues when we have to figure out where we're going to put it. Extra equipment at the high school because of the number of students that we're feeding. And we're branding all of our cafeterias, which is kind of exciting for the students to get involved. We hired an outside contractor to come in and inspect all the equipment to make sure it was in good shape. And then we also hired the Ingenious Culinary Concepts to, they come and they go to the high school, a middle school, and an elementary, and they go completely through all of our operations. They sit down and they talk to the students. They get feedback from the students. We had a committee that we worked with students at the high school, and one of their main complaints was that they didn't have enough time to eat. And I guess he's gone, but I wanted to give a shout out to the new principal and Mr. Abel because they're giving us another lunch period next year. I'm so excited.
I know you've been fighting for that for a while.
Oh, man. You can't imagine. So some of the things that he came up were really awesome that we're going to try to get implemented for next year, so I'll get to that in a minute. And then we're paying part of a maintenance staff position to come in and do the simple repairs on equipment and PMs and that kind of thing. And our biggest thing is no findings on our ADE or auditor reviews, which is always gray hair time. Here's a picture of our new cart. It was just delivered, and so it's not, you can't really see it very well, but it's the main shelf is a hot plate where we're going to have pizza. The top part is refrigerated where we can do sandwiches, salads, all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to get that set up.
And that's for the high school, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
And then here's a picture of some of our new tables. They were delivered, the last of them were delivered last Thursday or Friday. And the students really, really like them. The cafeteria, or the dining area, I hate the cafeteria, I hate that word. The dining area is awesome, and the kids really, really like it.
It is nice to use. We've had a couple of events in there for various activities in the athletics, and it is, even the parents like these better than the old benches and sitting down, so they were much appreciative.
It really looks good.
Really nice.
And then here's some pictures I took of the lunch had just started. We're getting the kids through. I tried to be really careful not get anybody's faces, but you can kind of see there in the serving area how crowded it is. And then the kids like to eat outside. We have that really nice covered patio out there that's really nice. So the kids have a really nice setup at the high school. And Maricopa Elementary, the site manager there went and talked to Dr. Robinson, and she was so excited. So they came up with this brand for Maricopa Elementary. It's the Diamondback Diner, which I think is really, really cute. And they have the sign up and everything. So that's that's what we want to do with all the schools. Get the kids involved, make it kind of a fun place for them. So my goals for next year for our department is to, you know, I don't want to give my age away, but I have to have my granddaughter teach me all this stuff on my phone. And so we want to get, everybody has a phone now, so we want to get everything on a mobile app so the kids can see what's on the menu for the day. We want to do all kinds of exciting things like that. We want to work with the graphic company to get our cafeteria signs up, work on our P&L, profit and loss statements, so I can give feedback to all of my sites, keep the site managers totally in the know. Work with my student groups. They're fun to work with. They tell you what they like, what they don't like, and they're pretty honest. So that's good. Continue with the wellness committee so that we can stay in compliance with that, and continue working with all of the staff to make our department profitable and beneficial to everyone. And hungry children don't learn, so we're excited to have that. Okay, so just briefly, highlights, positive year balance. We're able to pay back or pay to the district indirect costs, the new equipment and furniture that we've purchased, additional staff, our student focus groups, our taste testing for new menu items, and conferences and additional trainings for all staff. So we're moving right along, and I'm really excited. It's been a great year. So anybody have any questions?
I do have a question, but before I ask the question, I just want to thank you for all of these new innovative ideas that you're working on, because I think that the students and parents will really appreciate that. So that seems like a lot to take on, but I think it will be very valuable to our district. So thank you.
And one of the other things that I want to try to do, that I'm going to work with the company, they're supposed to contact me in April, is to get the lunch applications online. So parents can fill them out online instead of me having these paper trails of.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think district-wide, the more we can fill out online applications, the better.
Everything, everything.
So my question is, it might not, I mean, it's about, so I've had at least 3 people ask me, how can they give money to a school so that students who are out of lunch money, who don't bring a lunch, can use that? And I've had more than one, I've had actually 3 or 4 people ask me, because they really desire to do that. And so is that possible?
I've had several people call me about that, and I tell them how much I appreciate that, but that would be considered a donation. So I take the name and phone number and pass it on to my supervisor. I think that would be great. And I explain to the people that that's very fluid. It changes every day.
Right. No,
But I think that would be great. We've, with our new charge policy and everything, we've really kept charges down to a minimum, but there are those students that the parents think, well, they're going to give them a sack lunch if they don't have any lunch money, so I'm not going to give them any lunch money. You know, same kids every day.
and
so.
that's what these people want to help. And
Right.
so if we could just look into a way that, I mean, people want to give our district money to feed children, we should make it as easy as possible, I mean, in my opinion. So I
Right.
would like to see us look into that.
Right.
Thank you.
So I see this year, the 56%, the free reduced lunch percentage. I don't remember, what was it last year?
I think it was 54%,
So it's gone
so
up a
we're a
couple
little bit higher.
percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, I just want to express to the board, and I know you may already be doing this, but whenever I do site visits, I know a lot of times it's easy to focus on the classrooms, but always make sure I always get into the cafeteria and walk through there and greet the cafeteria staff, and I know that they really appreciate that. So
They do.
I think that that's important for us to also be present in the cafeteria.
And you know what, excuse me for interrupting, but that was something I wanted to mention was, there's some parents that call and say, well, I want all my lunch money back because my kid hates your food or whatever. And so any parent or any student, and I welcome you, anytime you want to go look at the kitchens, I mean, they're amazing. The staff is amazing. And I just want the parents to know that they're more than welcome at any time to come and visit with the kitchen staff, take a tour of the kitchen, whatever.
Well, and also they can arrange with their teacher to be there at lunchtime with their student as
Absolutely.
well. And I know that was something very rewarding for me a couple years ago, to be able to sit with a child at lunchtime. And, you know, it's great to build those relationships, not only with my foster child, but also with his class. And that was very rewarding. I have one more question. So the student focus group, is that something that's currently in place, or is that something that you plan to do?
We have a student group at the high school currently, but it's kind of disbanded. Most of them were seniors,
Okay.
and it's hard to get the kids into a focus group because they're in class all the time. So these were ones that were like office aides, that type of thing that I could pull, you know, in. And then when we have taste samples, I just have a table set up there in the serving area, and when the kids come by, so it's kind of difficult right now, but I've asked all of my site managers to work with a student council, because at least that's a start.
Oh, very good.
Great idea.
So I know in the past it's been expressed that there's been, in terms of the students' behavior, that there's been food waste. And I'm wondering if that's, I mean, I know you're not like weighing, you know, and comparing. Although if it was me, I'd like to do that, but, you know. But anyway, do you see any difference in terms of behaviors from this year, last year, that
They're more
in terms of waste?
They're more accepting of what they're being given. Let me put it that way. I don't know if it's because they're getting used to it or what. As you know, we're required to serve certain things, but we do have the offer versus serve, so we've explained to the students, put up signs and talk to them that out of everything that's offered, all they have to take is 3 things, and one of those is milk. So if they took a hamburger, which would be the meat and the bun and a milk, there's their reimbursable meal right there. So they are able to refuse things that they don't want.
Now that's different from this year compared to last year?
No, those rules were still in place last year, but this year they have a better understanding
Okay.
because we
So
put
they're kind of
posters
catching
up.
up
And
with the process. Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple things. So we've come a long way, Suzette, we've known each other for a very long time. And I'm excited when I walk into a campus and the kids are actually eating lunch. They're not just throwing it away. So I do think behaviors have changed. I think the education system has changed. So I appreciate you pushing forward and fighting for what obviously we have to do, which is government regulated. So I appreciate what you've done. Love the student groups, hope we can keep doing that. And my question is, the $186,000 that you turned back to the district, is that money set aside for you to purchase other equipment, or what can that money be used for? Because that's a couple of mental health professionals at schools. I'm just, you know, I like to go
teacher
shopping.
raises, or
Sorry.
staff raises.
Yeah.
That money goes into indirect costs. I don't know
Okay.
whatever happens to
Okay,
it.
that's okay. We'll go to you
Aaron's
next.
next,
Aaron.
so we
Aaron's
can ask
next.
him.
Okay.
You can ask him.
But I would be curious to see where that is. And then I just want to do a shout out. My son loves the craisins.
Oh, good.
He's addicted. So it's a good addiction. So I appreciate the offerings and the choices that they have. So thank you for all your hard work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here. And our final work study item is a review of the monthly financial report for February 2018 by Mr. Rush.
Thank you, President Orr, members of the board, and our future superintendent, Dr. Lopman. Again, we'd like to go over our monthly financial report, and with that, I didn't get a chance. I'm going to go briefly over. Last time we had our CAFR and our single audit, and it was on the agenda, but I didn't get a chance to go over that, but I'm going to kind of go over that a little bit. Again, we like to feature part of the school district every time, and on the front cover is our Maricopa High School music groups, and when they're in Anaheim earning the silver awards at the Heritage Performance Festival. So congratulations to them. Again, going over our monthly financial report, you can see by the memo, in different areas, we are at about 60%, which is about normal comparable. Although our district administrative assistance is being spent, which is good and bad, because our reserves are going down, and that's a concern, especially when we're looking at trying to purchase $1.7 million of curriculum, and I can talk to that a little bit forward if you want to, because I do have some ideas on that. Again, one of the things I do want to point out is on our fund balance page, FB1, we do have some reserves and fund balances, but they are being spent down. So, any questions on that part of the financial report?
I guess we can follow up on the, you have a question? Because that's a fund, right? Indirect cost?
Indirect cost fund, right.
Yeah, that's where the money's coming
right.
from. Yeah.
It is a fund, part of the fund groups that are state of Arizona. We have several funds, and the food service fund is a federal grant, grant, and with that there are indirect costs entitled to be, there's direct expenditures, and as you saw on Suzette's presentation, there's revenues, direct expenses, and indirect expenses. I have to compliment Suzette because she does a great job, and we have a lot of programs in the state, and we're one of the few, I think, that it runs a positive cash flow. Not only are our direct expenditures covered by our revenues, but then indirect, which she fully funds the indirect amount. There's a rate we could take a little bit less, but and it goes in the indirect cost fund. Indirect cost fund is that we've used to purchase a lot of different things, and every grant has a percentage established by the federal or state government, and it goes into the indirect cost fund more or less to pay for indirect cost type of things, because it's our administration, it's our utilities, it's our indirect maintenance staff, several things, and that's why that has been established, and it's in a fund in itself. Other states, they don't have a fund like this, but we do. We take that money and we use it for a lot of different things. So it's in the indirect cost fund. That might be something that we could possibly use for, because we have a reserve in there for part of the purchase of the curriculum. Anyway, but every grant has an indirect cost fund. IDEA has an indirect cost that goes in the indirect cost fund. Title does. So that's just part of how school districts operate. So we're no different than any other school district. So I will say this, that we probably are have a better positive cash flow, because I know of school districts that they operate in the red, and so they don't even aren't able to contribute to the indirect cost fund at all. In fact, MNO picks up a bigger piece. So personally, I appreciate Suzette's program very much, because I've seen a lot different. So, any other questions on the financial report?
Oh, are there any other questions? I have a couple.
Okay.
Go ahead. I don't really have questions. I just have future requests for next month. So go ahead.
You go first.
No, you go first. You're the president.
I know when I first got on the board, I was obsessed with the 301 funds and learned a lot about them. And just based on some discussions and going through this hiring process, it seems as I go back over the last 2 years, our balance in our 301 fund has increased pretty substantially. And I know that it has to be used for base salary, for performance pay, and can go towards M&O. But with the Red for Ed and everything that's going on in terms of teacher pay, do we have some room and flexibility in that 301 fund, which is meant for teacher pay, to either increase base salaries or to give a bigger 301 stipend? Is it called a stipend?
I'll go over 301, and I do have on our website a description of that, and I can go over that directly with you too. Actually, we've been going down in the 301. We've been spending it. There's three parts. There's Fund 11, which goes in this base salary, and we do have some of a balance there. We are spending that down. There's Fund 12, which we spend 100% of. In fact, it's a cash flow fund. We actually spent more than we had, but that's legal. And Fund 13, which we use for extra teachers, we spend 100% of those funds. I can go over those directly, and we do address that on the website. But it has been going down, so.
Well, I mean, I pulled up your financial report for October of 2016, and the total in the fund was 1.9 million, and then today it's 2 point something.
Well, I can. This is
But
on,
we
on
could
a
talk
cash
about it
flow.
later.
This is a cash flow basis. So Fund 12 will not be spent until the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
So if you're going to look at any fund in the middle of a year, you're going to get a different picture than at the end of the year.
Okay. True.
So.
Great. Well, I just think,
But-
I mean,
but Fund
it doesn't seem like we've got, there's a,
Oh, I can show you that we have spent it, and we're spending it down.
okay,
I
so
can-
that we are on a path to spend it down, so that we're not just,
on a
yeah.
path to spend it down
Great.
to zero.
Well, I mean, it's going to teachers, so
It
I
has
just
to
want
go
make
to
sure we
teachers.
maximize that.
Yeah, that's the law, and that's what we're audited to.
Great.
In fact, we overspent it,
Which is allowable. I read that too.
but
Yeah.
now we have to catch up. So, right.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions?
Question, I do have
Oh,
two
yeah,
requests.
comments. Yes.
So, Mr. Roush and President Noor, on the next board agenda, because in January, I remember asking for a Title I report on the $1.3 million and how much has been allocated at each school, because I know that it's also allocated based on Title I student population at each school.
Right.
So I haven't received that yet, so I would like to again request at the next meeting that per school, what has been allocated for Title I and how that money has been spent. Because $1.3 million as a budget committee person is a lot of money, so I would like to see that. And then the next thing I'd also like to see, knowing again on budget committee that we as a board approved a 3% salary increase last year. And I would just like to see, again, a report on how that's been allocated, because I have seen some teacher contracts, and that 3%, their contract base is the same as it was last year. So, and that goes for admin too, it was across the board. So that I'm just saying, for the next meeting, can we please do a piece on that?
Sure.
Because when I approve a 3% increase, I want to see it in the base salary, and that's what the intention was last year. But I've seen the teacher contracts and compared them from last year to this year, and the numbers are the same. So can you please do a report on that? And if there's a way to show that so that it shows that we've done that, because as a board member, we were pretty excited, rocking on, that we could do 3%.
Yeah.
But that was across the board, so it was even administrators. So I would like to see that at the next board meeting, that we can, that please explain that, because that's a concern for me.
Right. Or,
Thank
and
you.
it may just be that we need to explain it so that people understand how it was, put into place. But it's definitely something we want to make sure that everybody is receiving and realizes that in their contracts.
Well, yeah, because when we were looking at the superintendent contract last year for renewal, we actually had to figure that in there. And so I want to make sure that that is in the teacher contract, that,
Right.
so if you could do that next
Right.
time, I'd appreciate it.
I'll work with Mr. Beckett. Maybe Mr. Beckett can, he actually does the contracts. I can tell you for sure, in all the contracts that I administer, that I reviewed, that 3% is in there. I can tell you for sure, because my part of this is to make sure I have budget and the expenditures. We are expending that. I've had those questions with other staff, and I've sat down with them, and once we explain that and actually compare a contract, then they get to see that. But I'll work with Mr. Beckett on that. I'll work with Ms. Roden too, because she oversees the title, to break that out, and so maybe we can jointly go and explain that.
That'd be great.
So
For the next meeting, I know this meeting still is long, so I just wanted to put that out there so it's on the record.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
noted.
Yep.
I think
Be our
we forgot
pleasure.
that.
Yeah, no pressure, right? That seems to be our word for the night.
My pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure, okay.
Any other questions?
I actually did have one question. In terms of the, I know that there's a Pinal County move to go optical broadband, and lots of different school districts are going in on that. I was wondering if we've started looking on that, and if there, at some point, maybe for the next board meeting, the cost savings that we make, because from what I'm gathering from talking with my IT, it's going to be an enormous reduction in the cost for broadband. So I would like that to be on the next agenda if we can get some kind of estimate in terms of what's the potential savings. And I think it may even continue to go down more as more schools join on. It's kind of like a purchase and volume kind of thing.
Or even,
so it's, and I'd just like to see where we are, if we are looking at that, and if we do, what's the potential savings?
Yeah, so for the, why don't you look into that, talk to Pinal County, maybe some other schools that are looking into it, and then based on that, either a report to the board or potentially when the time is right to really consider it an agenda item, but definitely something I think that we need to pursue. So
Again, my pleasure on that. I'm kind of familiar with what Pinal County is doing, although we've already talked with our consultant on that. We're not sure how they think they will be able to accomplish that with E-rate. I will say tonight, on the consent agenda, we have lit fiber, which will approximately $2 million that is 100% funded by E-rate in the state, and that will
That's for the plan, right?
Right. So that will be a significant positive information flow for us. So that's on the consent agenda. That other piece is a countywide situation, and we're sure not, we've been looking at that, and it's been offered to us too, and we'll be part of that.
Yeah,
that whole
review
thing.
that. It goes through, we'll have access to it based on the plan currently.
Some of us that are kind of knowledgeable about the financing are a little bit miffed about how that's going to go,
I'd like to hear more about it on another one.
Sure.
But I just want to put it out there to see on an agenda item where we are, because it looks like everything that I'm getting, it's a good
I can guarantee you this: if there's something out there we can take advantage of, we definitely will take advantage of it. There's no question about that. So, lastly, I didn't get a chance last board meeting. I just want to again go ahead and emphasize our positive audits, because there's a lot of audits out there. One particular one in the valley that isn't so positive, and so we do have positive audits, and that's reflected in our CAFR. And I think it's important to note because a lot of the stuff that we do, we for instance, Suzette and a lot of the things that we do, purchasing and whatnot, contractual things, are all compliance issues that are auditable, and it's a lot of work. Single audit, this is the federal audit. If you were to open that up, you'd see a positive opinion on that too. So no federal audit findings, which again, I just want to point out that's very important to do. That's part of my job. As our former superintendent reminded me, it's one of the most important things that I do to make sure we have positive audits and positive cash flow. So anyway, they're not always that easy to accomplish, but I just wanted to make sure we put that for the record. So
great.
Anyway.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay. We'll now move on to item 6, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are action item A. Mr. Beckett, discussion and possible approval of the personnel schedule.
Thank you, President Noor, members of the governing board. You have the personnel schedule in front of you this evening. I will entertain any of your questions at this point in time.
Mr.
Questions?
Beckett, you know I have questions.
I understand.
Okay, first, I just want the board to know before we take any action items, I'm asking that item 15 be removed and voted on separately. And the reason I'm asking that is because, as I stated before, we have not approved a budget. And to approve a new position, I also would like to wait until the new superintendent has a chance to come in and evaluate employee assessment on each area and kind of work on that team. So I'm asking that that item be voted on separately, as I would like it pulled and put on a future agenda item. Next, item 19. Is that position that we already approved that at the last board meeting?
It was actually approved, I believe, Member Anderson, on February 14th or
Okay.
the 28th. I can't remember the exact agenda, yes.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. And then 18 and 25, we've got 2 people that are taking the place of 1 person. Can you explain why?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you, Member Anderson. Sorry that was confusing. Actually, number 18 is going to be filling the high school football coach position. The teacher assignment is still being finalized at the high school. The departing football coach obviously was teaching math. This person does not have a math background, so that's the reason why
Okay.
you will notice down on, number 25, that the
Okay.
math teacher coming in there is replacing our departing coach.
Okay. And then 30 through 32, what is the cost that that's going to cost us now? Do you have those? Because those are Smart Schools employees that are coming back from being retired, correct?
Our arrangement with Smart Schools is that we pay 80% of their salaries on top of an administrative cost. So they will be coming back on to their full contract salaries. This is part of the process that we've worked with our returning retirees. Again, we feel these are valued employees.
Okay.
Oftentimes, people who have great skills and great experience, and we want them to come back. And so, obviously, they're coming back to full salaries. I believe I sent those figures to you in terms of the exact salary amounts. But again, it would be a reflection of about 80%
Okay.
of what we paid last year on that.
And that's going to be in our budget?
That'll be included in our expenditures for next year. It will, yes.
Okay. All right. And then my last one, thank you, board, for indulging me, 56 through 59.
Thank you. Yes.
Why the changes in these employees, and what's the cost, and can this wait until after we have a new leader?
These are really no cost to the district. We just, the process is that we are required to present anybody who we are asking to do qualified evaluator work. So going in and working with teacher evaluations. These 3 people all have administrative licensures. We needed support this year. We've fallen behind, especially at our secondary levels, with getting our evaluations done with the transitions that were occurring throughout the course of the first and the beginning of the second semester. We're just trying to be compliant with the law and make sure that we have all of our evaluations taken care of. These 3 individuals are going to help us tremendously to get that workload done in a timely manner.
Okay. And you said there's no cost?
There's no cost, no.
Okay. That's all my questions on HR, so the only thing I have is I did pull item 15, number 15.
Well, that will need to be in the motion, but yeah.
Yep.
Are there any other questions? Ms. Anderson, do you want to make a motion per your?
Sure. I motion we approve the HR schedule with minus item 15.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Did we have a second? I'm
I
confused.
seconded.
Oh, you seconded.
I seconded.
She seconded.
Okay.
And I said all in favor.
Okay.
I guess we should do a roll call vote because that was really
Yeah.
awkward
Yeah.
in terms of the way it was in. Lisa? Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Thank you. By your vote, 4-1. Motion passes.
And then do I need to make a motion on item 15?
Yeah, now we need to, I'd
Okay.
like to discuss item 15 before
Okay.
you make a motion.
Okay.
Mr. Beckett, I realize with our additional staff, what is the justification for this position?
Thank you, and I can also let Mr. Roush weigh on this in a little bit. There are a couple new mitigating factors, Member Coutray, that are really going to weigh heavily upon our payroll department. First, let me first say that whenever I first got here, we had 2.5 FTE dedicated to that department. At this point in time, we have 2 people. One of those staff members is actually working almost 90% of their time on benefit compliance. Our coordinator back there does a terrific job, an amazing job. There are some additional workload requirements coming. The state is requiring now a shortened time frame at the end of the payroll periods in order to be able to turn, you're shaking your head, you know exactly what we're talking about, being able to turn around payroll at the end of payroll periods. And it is going to tighten that time frame enough that there's going to be more pressure upon her to be accurate. I'm sure all of you are aware when you do not play around with people's salaries, and it is a challenge, and anytime we have errors, it does cause concern, not only with the employee but with us. We want to make sure that is one area we want to make sure that we've got accurate on. Reporting requirements for, I'm sorry, the second point was, I'm trying to think what that second point was right off the top of my head. I can't remember it right now. But we have ongoing concerns, obviously, with our sick leave tracking. That is one of our payroll functions as well. And with the new ACA requirements, obviously, that's continued to be a challenge for us at this point in time. There is another reason, and I apologize. And I'm
House
forgetting,
Bill 2370
which is
going to take effect? I don't know, you put that, because I asked the same question.
and I apologize.
It's going to shorten the timeline from 6 days to 3 days,
he
meaning
talked
the
about
end
that
of
in a
the
that's
period.
exactly what it is. What's the first point above it that I gave to you? I apologize about
To
that.
comply with the Arizona revised statute.
Wait.
That was the 2 reasons you gave me.
Okay.
I have a question about the House bill, though. Has it been passed into law, or is it just going through the process right now?
My understanding it is passed.
It's
and
law-
we are
it's law.
required.
Okay. And so, but it passed this year?
I believe
It just did.
So it won't go into effect until
July
90
1.
days
July 1.
after the legislature adjourns.
correct, July 1st.
Right.
So
So that, it's not in, it won't go into effect until, no, it won't go into effect July 1st unless there was an emergency clause.
At the end of the legislative session.
90 days after
90 days.
they adjourn, it goes in. So it's usually between August and September. But yes, Mr. Roush wants to talk, so come forward, please.
It was passed before this legislative session.
Okay, a
It's-
former
It goes
session.
into effect July 1st. It shortens the payroll period from 10 days to 7 days. Now, the other thing is, I think administratively, you can appreciate that we were one of the lowest administrative cost districts in the state. Part of that is because we haven't increased staff, and we've increased students. And from my perspective is, we've gotten by. And part of the reason we've gotten by is we've all taken up the slack, and I have to review a little bit more payroll because part of this is internal controls. There's federal withholding, there's state, there's different, there's increased leave requirements, and we really have 1.2 people doing that right now, plus myself, that we're reviewing this payroll situation. When I looked at other school districts our size, we're at least one or more under. And
In terms of payroll, people assigned to payroll.
people assigned payroll.
Right.
Some districts have twice as many. Some people have 4 or 5 payroll technicians for the same size. So I think we've done a nice job. But this next requirement of going from 7 to 10 days is going to put so much pressure on us, and then we have to do the same checks and balances, and the risk of not getting correct payroll for individually and as a whole goes way up. So the internal controls have to be put in place. We have to have staff. Remember, we haven't decreased the number of payroll people that we have. And it's no different than, and let me give you a little bit of a metaphor. What happens when you decrease class size? The teacher's more efficient, right? But what happens when the class size goes up? Teacher isn't quite as efficient. If you keep going up with the same number of staff, you're going to explode. Simple as that. So we wouldn't even come to the board if we didn't think this was a crucial position. So.
Okay, I can ask a follow-up. So this goes into effect July 1, is what you
Right.
said. So I think my biggest concern is not whether or not we need this
Correct.
position. It's it happening outside of the budget process.
Yes.
And I say this every year.
Yes.
Every year. How can we have all of these people come to that room and talk about what the priorities are of the district, and you give them a certain amount of money that they can spend, and then you come to us, then we
Exactly.
get brought
then
to
we
us
piecemeal different things.
piecemeal positions, and I feel it's offensive to the budget committee to approve something like this before we've even seen what they're bringing forward to us as priorities. And since it doesn't come into effect until July 1, I would just like to wait until I've at least seen what the budget committee's priorities are and to get feedback from them on their final
Right.
process.
And that is why I asked for it to be pulled. I mean, we have a lot of departments. We have a lot of people that are doing double duty. So, there's already 12 people in that department. I would like to wait until we have the budget people. I just am not comfortable doing it outside. At least wait till they present. So that I'm not saying it's needed or not needed. I'm just saying, are we making sure it's equitable across all the other departments? So that's all. That's the only reason I'm.
Right.
It's not working anymore. Your mic's not working.
Your
I
mic's
don't think
not
it's
on.
working, no. And we can hear you, but people in TV land can't. Is the battery done?
Here comes the wizard.
Here it comes.
Thank you. I agree totally with what you're saying. The other point I was going to make is that our new contracts now require the district to offer balance pay options, a 12-month option for all
Yeah, I saw
employees.
that.
Right.
So our 9-month employees who used to be paid 9 months now can stretch that out over 12 months. And so we're in a position right now where we also need to be able to be compliant with that, which is going to be a lot of reconciling on the back of payroll. But I totally understand. I appreciate your comments. We do think this is a position that we're going to have to prioritize at some point in time, but again, we can make that part of either cabinet's recommendation to the board as well.
During
Absolutely.
budget.
We can do that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I would be much more comfortable with that.
Mr. Beckett,
Yes.
how much time would it take for you to go through the hiring process for this position? So you want this position to start July 1st, correct?
We would like to have it start as soon as possible after the fiscal year begins, yes.
And so how much time would it take for you to vet through applicants and offer position?
If we were able to advertise in May and at least pending board approval or something like that, that we can at least start the process of getting a candidate pool. We have always done very well with our classified administrative type of roles. There's not a problem with that. We will get a good candidate pool for that. So, and I have no doubt we'll be able to fill that by July 1st.
Okay.
And actually, I think we probably have interior candidates that would be interested.
Oh, then you got to fill the interior position.
All right.
Okay.
And again, we'd love to have that position there before that, because that first payroll would have to be processed at July 1. Another thing, we normally, if Superintendent Chestnut was here, he would go ahead and say that we've had kind of two parts of the budget. We have the first part that is the inflationary money that mostly is what the budget committee works with. But we also have increased enrollment revenue. The increased enrollment revenue, normally Superintendent Chestnut would come to you in May and say, because of increased enrollment, we need these positions to maintain. And so as part of that increased enrollment piece, that would be the piece of, what other positions. You need teachers, absolutely, for the number of kids. But with the support services behind that too, you need other things to make the district operational. So that's that other piece, and we normally kind of come to the district separately with that.
Correct.
What
That's
we
why I
were
want to
trying-
wait till
I
we have
understand.
our superintendent.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
Mr. Roush, am I understanding that you, from what you just said, that you want to hire that person before July 1st?
Would like to have them trained and hired before so they could help with the payroll
So that would
changes
be
July.
then on this year's, do we have money in this year's budget
Yeah.
if you're going to hire them?
Oh,
So-
yes.
So if we have the money in this year's budget to cover the cost, wouldn't it automatically roll into next year's budget?
It would. We do. We have, if you looked at our fund balance in M&O, we have $1.5 million, so we easily have that.
Okay.
We easily have it to roll into next year. We easily have, whatever that amount is. If it's 1 month, if it's 2 weeks, we easily have that amount to cover. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you for listening too. I really do appreciate that.
We even got you a new mic, Mr. Roush.
So we can table item 15. We don't have to make a motion, do we?
Mr. Beckett, do we need to make a motion on that, or can we just pull that?
Great.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So item B, discussion and possible approval of first reading of updated policy, DKA, payroll procedures and schedules. Mr. Beckett.
Thank you. I did get a chance to look at these briefly. Of course, these are just policy advisories that came down from Arizona School Board Association. So you can see the only thing that is added in that document is the 16 days apart. And again, that has no impact at all on our current practice.
Great.
Barring any further discussion, motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item C, discussion and possible approval of first reading of updated policy GCCH, professional support staff bereavement leave. It's a pretty big change.
Yes, it is a significant change. Thank you, President Nora. The information that we are seeing is many districts are opting to not have these 5 bereavement days count against sick leave. And so that is the recommendation that's coming down from Arizona School Board. And again, we're supportive of that. I had a conversation with Mr. Roush about this, and we believe we can absorb that cost in those situations.
My only question with this one is they took out the word fiscal. So how are they defining year?
I think in some districts actually are using calendar year, depending upon what they do.
So, I mean, I would be okay either fiscal or calendar, but just leaving it per year, I just think that leaves too much. Yeah, I think we need to define that. I mean, I'm okay with the rest of it, but we need to define it.
So can
One
we?
or the other.
Yeah, so can we put fiscal/calendar, depending on?
Per
No,
school
that's
year.
true for
Then it's
calendar.
still- right.
That's
Maybe just be per
It
school
needs to
year.
be one or the
fiscal
other.
or calendar.
Right.
Again, I just want to
agree
remind
with
that, our school year is a little different than our fiscal year. And so if we re-roll actually on a fiscal year basis for our employees, that would be my suggestion if you're going to add language there,
Leave fiscal in.
please.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we amend this and put the word fiscal back in and
I'll
approve it.
second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So does not now have to come back for a second reading?
No,
Since we changed it.
well, it'll go
For a
into the
second reading.
consent agenda.
Right.
for a
Consent,
second
is it-
reading.
they all will go back into consent
consent,
as a
yes.
second reading. And item D, discussion and possible approval of the first reading of updated policy IKAB, report cards and progress reports.
And thank you. Once again, this is an Arizona School Board Association recommendation, and this is way out of my comfort zone. So you can look at that. I have Mrs. Rossetti here tonight. If she needed to explain, I guess, that policy, she probably could. But again, I think this is in line with practice, best practice.
I like the changes because it's saying we're going to meet each student at their level and grade them on their growth, not,
Their capability,
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
I
So
agree.
I'm in favor of the changes, just so you know.
So is that a motion?
I motion to approve.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beckett. We are now on item E, approve to adjourn to executive session.
I'll
Actually,
approve.
you could do.
And F, we can do E and F together.
Okay. Would I need to read both of them all?
Yes, you would.
Read, okay. Well, I would motion to approve to adjourn to executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431, .03A3 and 4. The board may convene in executive session for discussion or consultation with the attorney and to consider its position and instruction its attorney regarding its position on a new superintendent employment contract and related contract negotiations. Also, I motion to the discussion and possible action regarding new superintendent contract negotiations. A, authorization for board counsel to begin superintendent contract negotiations, and B, authorization for board president to communicate with board.
No, you know what? F is an open item.
Oh, it's an open item?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
F has to
It's
happen in the
back in
public.
here.
Oh.
Possible action. We vote on that in the public.
So you just need to make E to go
Yeah.
into E session.
Okay. So I will just back up and go and, do I need to read
With,
that?
no,
No.
with what you
No.
just said.
From what I just said.
Minus
and
F.
Minus F.
Right.
Oh, my God.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned we are going into executive session. We're out of regular sessions, 8:52 p.m. It's not really adjourned. What is it? Okay. It's 8:52?
I know.
Because you had,
Saturday's a big night. Excited.
we've suspended.